Welcome to another Sales Wisdom podcast. We have Jack Reamer with us. He's a founder, podcast host, and a B2B matchmaker. His company is called SalesBread. So he's been at it for more than a decade now. We're going to talk about sales outreach today, most precisely LinkedIn outreach, which is still super effective in this day and age, where Jack traveled, how his entrepreneurial career started, and so forth. This pod is presented to you by podpire.com. If you want to start or scale a podcast, go to podpire.com. Jack, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Thanks, Charles. So I started SalesBread because today most B2B companies, they either lack the time or the expertise to turn those cold prospects, the dream clients, into warm sales qualified leads. So at salesbread.com, we tell clients to expect a lead a day. It's high, especially if you're going after top brass. But we do that by sending ultra personalized LinkedIn messages, some cold email as well, so that they don't have to worry about building the perfect list, taking the time to write personalization for every single prospect. They just worry about closing, and you can find more at salesbread.com there. But that's what I'm up to right now.
And why did you started this company almost a decade ago?
So SalesBread grew from, let's see, if we rewind the clock 10 years ago, I think that's what we're getting at here. Like, how'd this come about? 10 years ago, I was a B2B copywriter. Freelance, a hired gun. Going in, I would write radio spots or TV spots or magazine. I wasn't channel dependent until I discovered email. And when I did, I was a full-time freelance B2B email copywriter. But this is like newsletter opt-in based only. And I had a lot of fun doing that. It felt like a true sweet spot where copywriting met with results that could be measured, tested, improved on. It was a lot of fun. But in 2014, I discovered cold email. And this was an epiphany for me, Charles, because until that moment, all of my clients had two things they needed in order to succeed with their email campaigns that I would help them with. They needed a great campaign, so the messaging had to be great, okay? But they also needed the right people to opt into those lists. And a lot of times there was this disconnect, you see? And so enter cold email. And now for the first time, 10 years ago, I was able to not only write the messaging for these prospects, but also handpick the prospects that would see the messages. And from there, it's been a 10-year journey figuring out how to start these conversations with the B2B professionals better and better.
And also what caught my attention, and I wish I would have studied the same thing in university, but entrepreneurship and psychology. So you started a business straight off the university sort of. So quite an interesting start right there. As I'm analyzing your website, your copy, and all of that, it seems that one of your clients' testimonial reflects your magic, which is that you're nimble. You have these hooks. Where do you get all this data and these ideas, and how does your brain works in terms of structuring these and coining some phrase that are easily understandable by the receiver and has their curiosity?
So you're wanting to understand the thought process behind putting campaigns together, different types of campaigns that work, like from one client to the next?
Yeah, your idea process. For example, I get most of my hooks from very high performers, like the top 0.07% in my field. I listen to them on calls and I take notes, and then these notes become hooks, and these hooks become emails after they become headlines. So that's sort of my process.
You're saying, how do you do your copywriting research?
Yeah, or what goes on in your brain? Like, what's your magic? How do you convert an idea into something that's digestible by the market and will bring results to your clients?
Yeah. So as a freelance copywriter, I almost take this for granted that it's even a part of the process, because for so long I have been hired as a true outsider. And in short order, I need to figure out how to sell this product or service better than the founder or the VP sales can. And so step one is always like sharing resources with me. So it's very important that any project starts with a download of their best performing scripts. Have they sent out cold emails before? Did they work? Did they fail? I don't care. Let me see them. Show me the stats associated with them. There's a lot of learning there, because then you could see where the client has thought they were on the right track, and then you have stats to kind of tell you if they're right or wrong. But beyond that, I like to interview the best salespeople at the company and ask questions like, when you're giving a pitch, what slide tends to give you the most, aha moment? When you're considering a client to potentially work with, what signals do you look for to disqualify them? Well, tell me about your dream clients. Tell me about your best, who's stuck around the longest, paid you the most. What do they have in common? And like, basically, I keep a mentality of, I'm a student trying to very quickly learn how the best of this company sells so that I can emulate what they've been doing. But it doesn't stop there, Charles. Like, then I go off, I write the copy, build the list, and I get feedback. I check in with these thought leaders at the company and make sure they're proud of this. And usually it takes a couple rounds to make that, like, to match our hook with how they would spin it. And then you get to a product that's ready for presenting to prospects.
Right. Putting these ideas to the test is quite important, but some clients, they will either have zero ideas about like what works and what doesn't work, and some others, they will be over controlling over the message and kill any chances of making a great message. Do you get that? And what's your solution to
I
this?
almost never have a client that is overly controlling. In the very few cases I've suggested versions, I will push back. I will tell the client, like, look, based on my experience, we have seen this kind of message perform better than this kind of message. At the end of the day, you're paying me, so I respect that. It just means that right now, this is a scenario where we're diverging from my consult and your action request. And that happens 1 out of 100 times. It's generally a non-issue because, again, they need leads. They typically are less concerned with the approach is theirs than someone's helping them execute properly. Okay. And so let's go to that like earlier question where you were asking if sorry, Charles, like basically I'm getting a call in the headphones here. Let me try and scramble here. So basically, the client controlling is not the issue. What was the previous question?
Yeah, the other issue might be that, it's an issue you don't have experience in, and the clients, they don't have a clue either. So what do you do? Because my guess is that you work with bigger teams, so there's multiple members to interview usually. But what happens if
Yeah.
the client doesn't have a clue either? Like, what does your research look like then?
So then we have to pivot into a conversation about reducing risk. If the founder of this company does not know how to sell it, okay, let's put the assumptions on the table and figure out how to remove risk and test these quickly so that my client makes money, as opposed to putting all of our eggs in one basket that's not well tested. That's so important. And if you're working with a seriously new startup, I mean, Charles, the reality is I won't take a lot of these campaigns if they're that new. And instead, what I'll do is say, hey, you're founding a company, you got some work to do. Go out to your own network, pitch 10 people, get some customers in the door, and let me call them, let me talk to them. And then that's a 3x better starting point. You know what I mean?
100%. Now, your process, it seems that, yeah, you spend time with various folks. It's like interviews, you take notes. You have AI taking notes and sort of digesting the whole thing, or you're still like manually taking them?
So I will not use AI to take notes. And instead, I will record the sessions for like really deep dives. That's fine. But you'll find I like on a call, I'm taking a lot of my own notes while we speak. There was actually somebody that was on our podcast. It's a cold email outreach podcast, by the way, that they had a really interesting process. When we were speaking, he was typing, I could imagine 100 words a minute on like a debrief. And when the podcast was over, he was able to pay attention enough, answer questions, be an interesting guest, and he sent over like a breakdown of the outline that we discussed, and he immediately shared it. And I asked him, like, that's amazing, but why did you do that? He said, it helps me remember this conversation. So taking my own notes is, I think in this case, an asset.
Yeah, it could make sense because a lot of folks they recommend to take these notes with pen and paper. But like if you've been a kid like myself that grew up behind a computer, typing may also help with memory.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, I prefer AIs though because they can bring some nice summary, and then I can have a discussion with the discussion that we had, which is part of my client discovery process. Every week we talk as well, and we reflect on our previous hypotheses, and we check how the campaigns are going, and we also interact with an AI, namely Claude and GPT-4 nowadays to get more ideas, test more hypotheses, and see what's working and what's not. What I'm trying to get here is like your genius, my genius. I think it's product market fit and having great ideas, testing them at scale. I think you're probably a way better copywriter. I think that takes time. Do you read a lot nowadays? Does the podcast helps in terms of getting new ideas? And what's your digestion process? For example, me, I might take notes at the gym. I'm lifting and I have all these nice neurotransmitters in my brain. I get ideas, I send them to my phone, and then I experiment, and then I get, yo, that email was really bad. If I get like 5 to 10 of them, then I stop it. If I get a bunch of meetings, then I'm tripling down. So what's your full learning approach here?
I feel like there may be three questions in this. So do I read a lot of copywriting books? I think was the first one.
Or
The
books, just books.
Oh yeah, I love reading. I'm always going to be reading. I read about 50 to 60 books a year, but I really like, I'm not saying that's the most a guy you've interviewed, right? That's pretty good. But I read to enjoy it, and that means that I'm not always reading hardcore copywriting books like I used to when I was like cutting my teeth and figuring this shit out. But I find that even if I'm reading a fiction book, I might get ideas there too. I don't care what I read, and in fact, I have a rule where if I catch myself not reading a lot, I don't say, all right, today I'm going to read for 20 minutes. I just throw out the book I have, and I let better books propel my reading that way. And I'm less focused on reading business and growth books. I'm kind of like, what's a good way to put this? An indiscriminate reader. I don't care what it is. I'll read a cookbook, and if it's well written, I'll read the whole damn thing. If it's a sales book that somebody's highly recommended and it sucks in the intro, what do? Yeah, you go immediately to like the last page of each chapter, read the table of contents, read the end, read the beginning in that order. And, if that takeaway doesn't grab me, again, trash and off you go. I wish more of us read. And I think Twitter and podcasts and bite-sized TikTok videos are making us all shittier readers. But I believe it's a superpower. I don't know if you feel the same.
Yeah, I read Wikipedia nowadays and Indiscriminate as well. Was reading on the Capitol's architecture yesterday. It's pretty fun. I like reading at least one bio per day. So a couple of Capitol architects, or at least the ones that participated to the competition to design the Capitol, and they're very interesting people. Two of them are like architects and doctors, and
Hmm.
they grew up like in the British Virgin Islands. The only set of seven twins that survived, then inherited the
Wow.
slaves of his dad, sold the slaves, and was an abolitionist, for example, got wealthy in 1 year being the only doctor on the British Virgin Island, made
Mm,
200K in 6 months. So like
which is a
very
lot back
interest.
then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was £2,000, which is the equivalent of 200K in 6 months, which is quite impressive. So like fun facts like that. And then if I have deeper questions, I ask ChatGPT on my phone about X topic, and GPT pretty much knows everything.
Yeah.
So it's pretty
So
fun.
I like that. So Charles, I'm going to throw a question on my own here. So I'm hearing GTP is a big part of your work life, maybe even personal, for using it as a resource, right? Talk to me about your stance on using ChatGPT for sales personalization. This is a great topic, and I
Yeah.
think we'd have an interesting dialogue.
Yeah, Clay, I guess, is all the trend right now, clay.com. Um, it's like a spreadsheet, right? So you import Apollo data and then you can
Sure.
have the GPT write
Enrich it
anything.
with other plugins. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can talk about your client's potential targets and 3 ways to target this client base in 2024. Like what other tool can allow you to do that in 2024? So it's really top, but you need to invest a lot of energy in mastering it. It's like a boulder you're pushing, and 99.9 of humans are not ready for this right now. What's
So
your
it has
stance on
so
it? Do you use it on
well.
LinkedIn?
Sorry, I don't think that was the answer I was after. I was like Clay or using the interface or a spreadsheet enhancement with GTP. I'm just curious on, do you think ChatGPT writes good enough personalization for today's outbound messages?
Hell yeah. But most do not know how to write good enough copy using ChatGPT. They're not enough good at prompting. They're not patient enough. They're not tech savvy enough. They're
Mm-hmm.
not innovative enough to have these approaches. They don't have the resource also because it's quite costly to use Clay. I keep coming back to Clay, but Clay's the king of the hill right now. Um, so yeah, like
So
let's say 3 years, everyone will just be using AI, in my opinion, but doesn't change the
wow.
fact that human magic, like your magic, it won't ever disappear because
Mm-hmm.
you're tip of the top, and these humans they always want to grow and do better.
Yeah. So I have an interesting take here. I kind of feel like um, a lot of us, let's say all of us, especially if you're on LinkedIn in whatever fashion and you have somewhat of a decision making job title, we see poor personalization examples every day. It's not hard to think back into your own inbox, whether it's email or LinkedIn, and say, I can tell somebody didn't put enough time into this message. It smells automated, right? Okay. So my take from this is in 2024, outreach tools. I'll throw in Clay. I'll throw in cold email automation that's reached its high most usage right now. Throw in LinkedIn automate, whatever. It has become so cheap to go to Apollo. What's a subscription cost? Less than $100. They used to, you could download thousands of prospects with their email address, load them up into ChatGPT, say, and so we can send 1,000 prospects a day for pennies, right? And yet, I feel like this is like it's getting cheaper to send more and more messages. And yet, Charles, what are your thoughts about the like the way the market is shifting with sales outreach? It feels to me that we're running away with volume and we're forgetting about the quality of that message being in front of the prospect. What do you think?
I think pretty much the same as I mentioned, but I think that agencies like yours have a moat. Like you're going completely opposite of, for example, me, I believe in quantity. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. I believe quality is a cluster of quantity. Um, I love stats. I love experimenting. I'm an offer
Mm-hmm.
guy. Even before I am a personalization guy, I'm all about great offers. And yes, I will do my quote unquote diligence when I'm going to target someone. But for example,
Mm-hmm.
on LinkedIn, I sent you a non-personalized offer. I did check your profile. I did note you before I outreached you. You were referred to me by a mastermind friend, and I sent you this
Mm.
automated message, and I didn't even put your name in there because I don't believe much into personalization or investing energy into someone even
Mm-hmm.
before like I've known this person or I've spoken to them. To me, everything is black up until we have this conversation now. Jack exists to me nowadays, or at least that's
Mm.
my opinion. And I'm not like
Do
the
you,
average
do you
person.
remember? Do you remember what I asked you on LinkedIn before I said yes?
Yes, I think you asked, so you made your due diligence. You asked like two questions to see if it was authentic.
Yeah, I said like this feels actually really automated, and I'm not sure this is real or for me.
Yeah,
And I left it there, and you told me it was through a mastermind connection. Had you not done that, for sure we wouldn't be here today. So
yeah,
a lot of times, um, uh, like yes, the offer is very important. I tell people all the time that great personalization will not win you the sale. It'll just earn you the right to get their attention for the rest of the message, where it doesn't get
right.
blown off as a regular thing. Um, but I'll say this: like if you're sitting there not pleased with your reply rate, and by the way, you like stats. We crunch numbers. SalesBread has an average reply rate of 19.7% right now. Like actually, not right now. Across the last 5 years. So we're telling like people like it takes a lot of work, but it, you know, if 20% reply is what you're after, I think you may need to consider, is your offer good enough to go with the level of personalization you're going? And I kind of have this belief, Charles, where personalizations either don't do it at all or go all the way with like true blue, like genuine personalization. The half-ass middle is obvious and repulsive, I think, to the modern buyer.
You're right.
Mm.
And well, okay, two things. I think AI will take over most of this over the long term. I think AIs can do better than humans all over the scalp, and that would be in a period of 5 to 10 years. But in your case, the hyper personalization, it has you learn some patterns of what is interesting as personalization and what is not. And even in the AI realm in Clay, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for personalization strategies, quote unquote. So let me ask you this: what kind of personalized message is relevant in this day and age? Is we both went to Harvard sufficient enough?
I say this: if AI can do it, it's not good enough.
So
Full
what would
stop.
be examples of what would work? Is it really case by case?
Okay.
And if
Yeah, okay, here's one. On a LinkedIn profile, somebody had written like a joke in their job title. It was CEO and Vegemite enthusiast. Okay. Um, among other things on the profile, I wrote, um, I tried Vegemite with little to no results. What am I missing? Right. And she thought it was funny. And we got a meeting. Like, yeah, you could program like if you see a food related comment, ask, but like at that level, are you sure that having just like a great researcher going through these people wouldn't be a far better scenario? Like if you really cared about quality first.
yeah, I don't care about quality first. I'm stubborn, you know. I have my thesis and I'm hard to change, but I am also open to it. The example you gave is quite good. I like it. Um, I do think AI could produce something like that though. You tell it like it's just like, oh, is this data available on this actual profile, or is it a boring LinkedIn person that just states the facts, you know? Um, then my mind is like, oh, could I tell that AI to potentially guess what that person would be into? I like the food stuff for sure and their passion, like if they're a car enthusiast. Um, I do some personalized outreach myself sometimes. Um, it's like, oh, I saw that you're in, for example, Buenos Aires. I've been there, watched
Right.
the horses run by. Next time I'm coming around. That's pretty a bad example, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
places in which I've physically been, asking people about their own city and what they
Mm-hmm.
love, hard stuff, not brain stuff, I think would work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think I should do more of that. I'm not sure
Yeah,
how or in what scenario, but I think I should at least try
yeah,
more.
and bear in mind, this is not for low value prospects. These are for, like VIPs to your business. And bear that in mind. Like I think it's kind of funny that if we're going after a $12,000 lifetime value sale, and yet we're not even proofreading the messages for us that go out. Like I'm like, you're treating the CEO that you just sent that message to like a cheap knockoff product. Like let's be, adapt more of a Lamborghini approach when we're selling. Like remember, it's like the first touch with your brand, and it's really hard to recover from an awkward first touch. And with that in mind, like you can imagine how um, having a high end experience from that first message would be important for not only the brand but for just reaching the people that I've shown that much value for the company
I
and
agree. That
potential.
that great researcher, I think they don't only have the attention to details and analyzing the keywords, but they must have something that's personal as well. If they're gonna do the outreach, right? So they need to have lived a lot in their lives. That's at least
Hmm.
my hypothesis. Or does the researcher just forwards the information to you? Do they take your data? How does that work?
So remember, first rule number one is if AI can do it, it's not good enough. Okay. And then number two is like you're a blank canvas when you start researching somebody, because everybody shares online differently. While others are more private and reserved, you would take a different approach than the person who's sharing. So instead of like, here's how I do things and try and force my personalization research, I say, what has this person presented that we can then start going through? Typically, they will have a bit of a hierarchy of what they're proud to share. And so it depends on the person here. I mean, if like this is you, like imagine this screen is your LinkedIn bio, like for some reason way at the top you've chosen to talk about Oaxaca even before your personal accolades. um I think you're proud of that. I would investigate a little bit further if you have photos of you, right? We talked about Puerto Escondido before we hit record. Like if you were a surfer, but immediately would go to that because it's, close to my heart. Potentially there's commonalities, but you see what I'm saying? Like we all share in a disproportionate level depending on what we're proud of. Go there.
So I would tell my AI, if Montreal, then Poutine. And
Yeah,
like that's how my
you
brain works,
can.
it's like
It's interesting, but like, but what if you happen to share a really personal story on LinkedIn 3 days ago, right? Then I'm going there. Right? So like, and I'm not here saying like never AI ever, but I am saying quality matters way more, because remember, like people respond to our messages. And people are smart. They're busy running companies. They have a $10 million budget that they do. Like, if at the very least we can give them our best shot, I feel like we owe it to that prospect, right?
good stuff. Good stuff, Jack. Where can people find out more about you?
Best thing to do is head over to salesbread.com. And let me give a shout out to your listeners here. If you're listening and you listen to the conversation about good personalization or providing value for the people you send it to, let me put my money where my mouth is there. If you have cold email or LinkedIn message template that you want me to review, just head over to salesbread.com, click that contact button, say you listen to the cast with Charles, and I'll give you a teardown of your own piece. Just please give me like 3 days to get back to you. It's going to be me. I'm not going to farm it out, and I'll give you a thoughtful review. That's salesbread.com, where you can reach me.